She Can, we tell women's stories. We show how women got to where they are today to be role models for others and serve others on their journeys. I'm very excited to talk to Tracey Camilleri today. Tracey, welcome to She Can. You're the co-founder of Thompson Harrison, a leadership and organizational development consultancy. You're also an associate fellow at the Said Business School in Oxford. And you co-wrote a brilliant book called The Social Brain, The Psychology of Successful Groups, which is really an invaluable guide for people working in teams. So tell us a bit more about yourself and what you do.
Oh, well, thank you, Stephanie, and I'm so glad to be here. Well, your introduction gave a lot of it away. I'm co this and co that, and collaboration and working with other wonderful people has been absolutely, the joy of my life. And I think the focus for me is on helping people to develop, is on creating organizations that are really containers for us to be more human. My unit of identification is usually the group rather than the individual. And, how can a group become more than the sum of its parts? And the particular lens that we've brought to our book is an evolutionary psychology lens. There is so much talk about the new, the shiny, and we've been interested in what doesn't change about human behavior and what hasn't changed for millennia, and how leaders, particularly by understanding a bit more about our human psychology and biology, can actually work with the grain of it in order for groups to, yes, to perform, but to thrive, to have impact, to have the confidence to innovate.
Which I love, Tracey, and I'm reading the book and I've learned so much already about, all the things that you've been learning and the knowledge that now you put out into the world. Tracey, so tell us a bit more about your journey. How did you get to the place where you thought, I'm really interested in how people work best together?
Well, that's a good question. I suppose I was brought up in the middle of nowhere on a farm in the middle of the New Forest. And although that sounds an odd place to begin being interested in human beings, because I was mainly surrounded by animals, it was a good place to use one's imagination and to, we spent a lot of time with my little sisters, doing plays and scenarios and imagining. And then I suppose working through university, I had a lot of jobs like being a tea lady or being a receptionist. And I've always liked watching the dynamics of human systems and how people really behave. I spent a year studying in Alabama where I felt completely out of my depth and out of my league. And, and that again was an exercise in being an outsider, but just watching and being fascinated by culture, by what brings out the best in people. And I think then working at Oxford Said Business School and teaching, thinking how do you create a group that can really collaborate where they're not competing with each other, but actually, they're contributing to one another. Mm-hmm. So I think those were the sort of mainsprings of it. And I suppose the last thing I would say is also, being lucky enough to study English literature at Oxford, in fact, that immersion in stories, in human stories, in humanities, where you have the chance to go deep inside characters. It's such a fast track for understanding human behavior. So I suppose that's my sort of crucible of how I developed this desire and this belief that what we do, that people like you and me, is hopefully create environments that will be better for, you just talked about your son's birthday, for the next generation to work in. And, that's one of the things I feel really strongly and one of my motivators.
Tracey, so tell us a little bit about your day-to-day. What do you do on a day-to-day basis, and how do you help and support companies and, I assume many different entities? Because if I hear you speak, I think schools need this, universities need this. You're all about bringing the best out in groups. And as we are always, almost always in groups, in a learning and corporate environment, it seems essential to know everything that you know.
Well, I mean, that's fascinating. I think we are always in groups, but we often don't think in groups. I think it's such an interesting moment right now because the shape of work is being redesigned. I mean, everyone is trying to get the best of both worlds, the kind of digital world and the face-to-face world. And people are experimenting and trying things, and people are falling short. And everywhere we go, people are, how can we actually take the best of both and really think about creating structures for the future? So on that side, we are working with organizations to design social strategies. You know, we've all, you know, designed marketing strategies and digital strategies and so on. And people have imagined, I think, that the social side of organizations just kind of looks after itself, or that isn't the work, but it actually is the work. So we've been surprised. We've ended up talking to, you know, just recently talking to quite a few organizations that are thinking about their infrastructure, thinking about their office, thinking about their space, and thinking, well, hold on a minute. We've got to think about what people are going to be doing in this space, and when and how and what's working before we start to redesign the office. We do that. We bring senior leaders together often for you know, leadership development programs, but very particular ones using the Oxford idea of the tutorial, of this kind of Socratic exchange, the working out of issues. We design the spaces, you wouldn't be surprised, given our book, the spaces in between that are the most important social side of it. We do a lot of experiential learning as well. Shared experience is a great bonder, and we are very informed, as I said at the top of this conversation, by evolutionary psychology. Our co-author is Robin Dunbar. Robin is the eponymous Dunbar of the Dunbar number, which is 150, beyond which apparently the weird stuff happens. And it's amazing how many people we spoke to. That 150 was kind of tipping point where relationship became, you know, much more transactional, where it was the tipping point between us and them. And, you know, we have been fascinated in what happens to leadership at that point, and how you can scale intimacy, how you can scale human interaction in a really productive way. I don't know if that answers your question, Stephanie.
Yes, it does. It does. I mean, I realize you wear a lot of hats, and I think this is so incredible in the book, and it's really something I've heard for the first time. I knew that there was always a special number, and it's so interesting how you explain how it goes from 10 to 50, from 50 to 100, from 100 to 150. And I think that our overall health and well-being is really hinged on the number of close friendships we have, but also that we work well in the teams and the spaces that we operate in as humans. And so I thought this was such an interesting book because it really drills down in that, and it shows company examples of companies that do that very well. And the thing that they seem to have in common is incredible social spaces.
I think that's, you know, there's so much money and investment, quite rightly, has been spent by corporates and governments on mental and physical health. But right back in the 1950s, when the World Health Organization was defining well-being, there was a third, which was social health, that actually true well-being comes from mental, physical, and social health. And again, your point about health, Robin always says, and there's research to show that the most powerful thing you can do to prolong your life, better than giving up smoking, better than losing weight, is to have 5 friends. And for a long time, they have been somewhat bewildered about that. But recent research is showing that even has an effect on one's immune system. And so you're right, the word health and social health is very much at the center of what we do with organizations.
Tell us a little bit more about the time when you were sorting applications for the leadership program in Oxford that you were running.
Sure. Yes, I was the director for 10 years of the Oxford Strategic Leadership Programme. It's an amazing development programme that happens twice a year, and people apply from all over the world. And I used to set myself the challenge to sort the applications at the end of the process in a blind way, not knowing who they were from. And I could pretty much, though not always 100%, sort them according to the men and the women who were applying. And the difference was this. The guys generally saw their strategic problems to be externally present. So it was the board, or it was the supply chain, or it was the currency rate, or it was something out there. And almost to a one, the women, the brilliant women who came, saw the shortfall and the challenge within themselves. They saw it as something perhaps that they lacked, some kind of capability. And I used to think that was extraordinary because, of course, when they came onto the program, these women were brilliant. They were leading, they were doing so well. And I never really understood why that was. And I used to talk about it on the program, something so stark. And I think that does link back to this confidence gap somehow, that whether it's, I don't know, whether it's testosterone, what it is, or the way we're brought up. But I think finding ways to close that gap is an important thing for us as busy, successful women.
Yeah. Thank you so much for saying that, Tracey. There's a woman called Elise Lunan, and she wrote a book on our best behavior. And she explains to us why that is, and that we are conditioned as women for goodness rather
Yes.
than anything else that we
Yeah.
condition men for. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Tracey, so what would you say is your main motivator with all the work you do?
My main motivator, I think, probably comes out of, as many of us have, kind of struggling in structures that are actually transactional rather than relational, where one is required to kind of be diminished in a way by the nature of the system. And my motivator is an ongoing and deeply held belief that we can be both productive when we can work in a digital and a face-to-face world. But as human beings, we need social interaction. We need each other. And that to create the spaces, as you said, the opportunities to see that as part of the work, not the sort of just an office party. And, you know, and by social, we don't just mean fun, although we mean fun and joy, but it's the back and forth. It's the conversational. It's the learning through me having half a sentence and you having the other half of a sentence, and between the two of us making something that wasn't there before. And I think that, if that's clear at all, is my ongoing belief and motivation for the things I do. And the things that we do at Thompson Harrison is to help organizations to thrive in that human sense of the word.
Tracey, so what top qualities do you think that you have that serve you to do this work?
I'm very English. I'm not very good at talking about my qualities, but I knew you were going to ask me this question, so I, prepared something. I think I have late onset boldness, and I think when I was young, I was probably not particularly confident. But I think boldness with kindness, where you can actually see what's really going on. Often people don't know what they need exactly, but if you can listen and watch and really be on the side of someone who's asking the questions, but speak truth to it in a bold sort of way, I think that is helpful. I think I'm married to someone who trained as a psychoanalyst. So, I think that sort of seeing what's going on beneath what's purportedly going on is another thing. I always watch, the symbolism of how a meeting starts, what's really going on, the stories that are being told. And, I spend a lot of time thinking, well, what's really at issue here? I'm curious myself. I always, I love to be in situations where I don't, I'm going to learn. And, I love a blank piece of paper and think we can start and, create together. And I love, back to that thing right at the beginning, I love collaborating. I love the co-side of things, I love, our clients, we're so lucky, are often, really prepared to be partners with us and sounding boards, which is a great joy.
Tracey, so give us some top tips for young women, but maybe women of any age, how they can be more self-serving and do themselves more favors in the work environment or any environment potentially. And give us some tips on how groups can thrive better.
Yes, I mean, I said I was late onset bold. I think I was 50 before I walked into a room and said, this is what I want, and I want to lead it. And that is too late, that is too late. So I think, you have more power than you think you have, whether you're 16, whether you're 30, whether you're 50, and all that anyone can say is no, and no doesn't hurt you, but asking is such an important step, and not feeling, and probably lots of people have said this, Stephanie, but not feeling that you have to know everything in order to step in to take the next step. Nobody does, I find the brilliant women, young women I work with often feel that they have to be totally prepared. And it doesn't mean to say you're a charlatan or a bullshitter, but nobody's totally prepared to take the next step. So I think boldness, I think, confidence, and, I hate to say it, talking about money. I mean, it's sometimes money is how you're seen by the system. And actually, one has to ask for more sometimes. I know those are very, very basic things to say, but it always amazes me. It always amazes me that, that doesn't change that issue. And teams, think about scale. Too many teams are too big to thrive. We are so good at including, but there's no point including people who don't have time in the system to talk or time to contribute. So kind of really think about the size of your teams. Think about creating an environment where people thrive. And I think it's not what you do, it's creating an environment within which other people can do things and be more themselves. And as you say in our book, through all that research, we came up with something we call the Thrive model, which looked at the 6 foundational conditions for groups to thrive. And again and again and again, those organizations that held those 6 conditions, which not surprising to anybody, but held them in balance, were those where the teams were really thriving and performing and enjoying being together. So, there's some really, really practical things that you can do in the book, whether you're a leader or part of a team, and things you can experiment with.
Tracey, thank you. I love that you're giving us a little teaser. So everyone who's listening, you got to go out, buy the book, and read up on what that is exactly. Tracey, so what are you most proud of to date with all the things you've done?
Oh, gosh. Proud of my children. I'm sure everyone says that. 2 wonderful grown-up children. My eldest is about to get married, so I've got to think about what I'm going to wear as mother of the bride, which is really freaking me out. I'm proud that we had the discipline to synthesize the things that we really believed in and to do the research for our book and to work collaboratively with Robin, who came at it, from science, and we brought the practice to it. And I'm proud as well, setting up, we started in 2018 at Thompson Harrison. It's a female-led business. And we thought, actually, we don't have to do anything the way everyone else does. We can have a culture, and we can enjoy working together, and we can enjoy our collaborations and think about how we grow. And that's been a great exploration and a great source of learning. And we don't always get it right. Goodness, we don't. But, I'm proud of that.
Tracey, and who are the role models that inspire and motivate you?
Gosh, I am motivated not by anyone in particular, but I'm motivated by those kinds of leaders who use the pronoun we instead of I, who really worry at the edges of what they do, and who create an opportunity for people to feel more themselves in their presence. In other words, they are not diminishers. This is not about them, but they have some kind of greater purpose and some kind of greater effect. And those people, I've come across often actually, and they're often not the big egos and they're often not the big voices, but they're the people I really admire and they inspire me.
Thank you so much for such a brilliant answer, Tracey. So give us a little bit of your future plans. What's going to happen for you in the next years?
Uh, well, I'm going to Crete next week, which I'm really looking forward to. I think we're feeling our way, and I think it's feeling almost where the heat of what we believe in, where it's taking us in a way. Everybody looks to grow. We look to grow within reason. We don't want to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater of what we envisaged originally. But I think we look for like-minded clients. We look for working in different sorts of sectors, potentially just starting to work in government as well, to be able to see if we can make a difference.
Tracey, I'm very grateful for this really inspiring conversations. I'm very grateful for this incredible work that you do that makes the spaces that we inhabit as humans better. And all the spaces we inhabit need to be better for future, whether that's in government, in a learning environment, or in corporations. So thank you so much for all the incredible work you put out.
Thank you for inviting me, Stephanie. I've enjoyed it.